Good morning, this is Manic with your weekly astrological weather forecast. I'm doing the week starting today, April 13th, 2020, which is Monday, through Sunday, April 19th. And let me just say, so we're starting the week with the moon in Capricorn, which quickly becomes a third quarter moon conjunct Saturn, conjunct Pluto and Jupiter. And there's this sort of dichotomy. I think I should be cleared in saying that there's a situation, there's what's going on in the macrocosm, and there's what's going on in the microcosm. Okay, so on the long-term level, or in the background, we have still Jupiter and Pluto conjunct toward the end of Capricorn, and Saturn is still just at the beginning of Aquarius, and it's actually going to retrograde soon and go back into Capricorn. So basically, in the background, we have a very tense situation, a very serious situation. We have these large changes happening to our larger structure of society. We have these large problems that we're facing as a species, or as countries, or very big picture problems and changes. And it's a very intense situation, and this is very consistent for basically all of 2020. So that's not going away. I just want to be clear that in the long-term situation, it's intense every day basically, and that's just in the background. But in the short term, there are a lot of other developments happening in more short-term ways. There is some more free-flowing energy in the short term, and there is some more positivity in the short term. But there's a mixed bag going on in the short term. Okay, so just to be clear, long-term or big picture is very intense, very heavy, very Capricornian. Short-term, more of a mixed bag, but more positive, a little bit more free-flowing energy. Okay. And I'll sort of expand on that as I go into the forecast for this week. But so we start today, Monday, April 13th. So the moon has just recently entered Capricorn, and so it's in detriment in Capricorn. It's highlighting this serious Capricornian energy. And again, just to say, I think if I had to attribute the entire year of 2020 to one sign, it would kind of be Capricorn. It's a very Capricornian year because we have Saturn sort of dipping in and out of Capricorn at the beginning and the end of the year, although it's in Aquarius right now, and then Jupiter and Pluto basically conjunct still around 24-25 degrees Capricorn. So yeah, and Capricorn rules the structure of societies, and it rules our sort of our thinking beginning to think long term, beginning to make long term plans. Capricorn's a planner. Capricorn is the hierarchy of society. So these big outer planets hanging out toward the end of Capricorn are prompting us to make changes. They are prompting society to change through basically nature is changing. We have events happening right now that are prompting us to change on a large level. So today on Monday, as the moon is entering Capricorn, it's highlighting these big changes and this serious energy. It's highlighting what's going on in the long term, especially going into Tuesday as it begins to not only approach Pluto and Jupiter, but also make the third quarter square with the Sun. It's becoming a third quarter moon as it gets toward the end of Capricorn. And just a quick mention, Mercury has only recently entered Aries a couple days ago. It quickly just over this past weekend, as Mercury entered Aries, it squared the nodes and sextile Saturn. So that does bring some new developments, maybe in the media, or just on an informational level. People are thinking differently. People are talking differently. There's a little bit more clarity, a little bit less delusion, since Mercury is in Aries. right now and not Pisces, where it was in Pisces for the past 2 months until just recently. So yeah, that does bring change, and it does bring a little bit of some plot twist energy, I like to say, as it squares the nose. Okay, so that's just recently happened, and then now we've got the moon getting into Capricorn, where it's in detriment, getting into, again, the conjunction with Jupiter and Pluto just in time, as it has a square aspect with the Sun. And this all happens mostly on April 14th, Tuesday. So this is sort of the channeling from the macrocosm to the microcosm, as above, so below. So there's these big picture, there are these very large changes happening in the world that are prompting, they demand immediate action, basically. And that's what's happening with this third quarter moon conjunct Jupiter-Pluto. And of course, it's highlighting the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction, and this has already technically happened, but it's still basically going on since Jupiter is still very close to Pluto. And that brings about a lot of different things. Jupiter is the expander, and Pluto is the destroyer, so Jupiter's kind of blowing up this heavy, intense energy and making it widely available and widely obvious. But also, these two planets are about truth and about, they're both very moral planets, and they are truth seekers, and they want justice. And because they're in the sign of Capricorn, which rules authority figures and governments, I think that for those who seek it, we are actually getting some very honest portrayals of our leaders at this time. The good, the bad, and the ugly. We're being able to see who our leaders really are and how effective are our governments. Yeah, for better or worse. I think the events that are happening at this time are one positive aspect is we can at least see the truth of what's going on with our society or what's going on with our leaders. So Jupiter and Pluto, I think through this destruction or through this sudden change, all a crisis is really a big sudden change. But through these large-scale sudden changes, we're getting some truth about the world. So that's one positive aspect. But it's disruptive. It's this is a very disruptive aspect. Sometimes ignorance is bliss, and sometimes I think some of these truths that we're getting are very positive and uplifting, and some are challenging and darker. In general, there's a lot of dark and light energy right now, depending on where you look. That's kind of what you'll get. So I think all this is kind of being brought up. All this is being brought up by this whole aspect, this whole third quarter moon conjunct Jupiter Pluto, especially on April 14th, Tuesday of this week. And in general, I would say the most intense, stressful day would be Tuesday. Starting this week on Monday, it's getting more intense as the moon is entering, as it's getting closer to that aspect. Tuesday, it really culminates. There might be some news, which is perhaps not so pleasant, some tense situations, whether it be in our air lives, personal lives, or big picture situations. There's some tense developments, there's some crisis energy, there's some developments which require change, but as we go into later this week, it'll get a little bit more subdued, a little bit more relaxed, just a tiny bit. Of course, we still have that heavy, intense energy going on in the background, but especially in the short term, in the more immediate aspects of our lives, things do get a little bit lighter toward the end of the week. So I'll show you what I mean. So April 15th, Wednesday, it's sort of there's a change as the moon enters Aquarius, so it's not in detriment anymore, and it's crossed Saturn, Jupiter, and Pluto, which are these, again, they're these larger planets which are are bringing up a lot of difficult changes and themes. So as the moon enters Aquarius and it leaves this difficult region behind, things do get a little bit lighter, and the moon does have to cross Mars, and Mars is a disruptive planet. But this, in general, this is one of the more positive areas of the zodiac right now, because going into Wednesday, we've got, just to get off on a tangent real quick, but it'll come back around. Mercury passes over Chiron. Mercury is traveling very fast right now. It's traveling about as fast as it gets, so almost 2 degrees per day. So it quickly passes over Chiron. Chiron in Aries is bringing up our own personal wounds. Our personal emotional wounds are very obvious right now. And in the lower form of that energy, we could have self-pity and thinking like, why does this have to happen to me? Why is this happening to me? And it's almost a sort of selfish self-pity. But in the higher form of this energy, you can use what's happening. You can say, something's happening that's bringing up my own personal wounds, whether it be current emotional wounds or from the past. And I can use that for my own strength. I can use that to evolve. I can use that to become stronger and to help others. That's what Chiron is all about. In order to heal your own wound, you have to heal other people who have that same wound. And if you've been wounded in a certain way, you become sort of an expert on how to deal with it. Of course, once you've dealt with it yourself. So Mercury, basically anything in Aries is highlighted. And especially as Mercury crosses over Chiron, it's bringing up all our wounds are very obvious. We're very emotional at this time. Our wounds and our empathy and our compassion are all very free flowing right now. And as Mercury crosses over Chiron, it brings all that up and brings it out. It makes us want to communicate our wounds, and it makes us more intellectually compassionate for one another. It makes us all want to connect more on a mental level and an emotional level, especially because as this is happening, it's forming a sort of loose sextile. Mercury and Chiron conjunct forms a loose sextile on Wednesday with Mars in Aquarius, and the moon as well. And then on the other side, it makes a sextile with Venus. And basically all month, we also have Venus and Mars trining in the air signs. And then going in later this week too, Mercury will leave the conjunction with Chiron, but it'll become more exact in its sextiles with Mars and Venus. So it'll sort of enter this like three-way aspect with Venus and Mars. So basically all three inner planets, Mercury, Venus, and Mars, are actually very harmonious right now. And because they're inner planets, they mostly rule our short-term lives and our immediate relationships, our social relationships, and our personal identities. So because these three planets are all in positive yang signs, and because they're all in harmonious aspects with one another, there is some positivity in our relationships, and at this time, people are actually making the most of what's going on. People are utilizing their time and people are compassionate for one another, and Mercury conjunct Chiron is this sort of shared trauma that's happening. Chiron in Aries in general, especially sextiling Mars and Venus, it's allowing us to socialize. It's easier to socialize at this time because we all have, well, first of all, I guess there's something to talk about, right? Like we already know something about each other because we're sharing this large chapter in our lives right now. There's basically a shared trauma that's happening. And so that's part of this easy socializing energy. It's very easy to socialize right now, and there is that free-flowing, spontaneous, energetic energy happening right now between us as people. And this is all short-term stuff, or it's all immediate stuff. So it reminds me of a sort of concept where basically the more complex something is, the more difficult it is to maintain. So these large-scale government policies and large-scale countries and bureaucracies and welfare, or just bureaucratic systems in general, they're difficult to maintain in the long term, and this comes up during times of great change because it's much easier for an individual to evolve to a new circumstance rather than having a whole large structure, a large system or bureaucracy react to a new change in the environment. Okay, so at times of great change or crisis, because really all that a crisis is a time of sudden change, we are reminded that it's very difficult to maintain the complex structures. And so the strength during times of great change is in the simple things. It's in the small picture things. So it's in ourselves and our immediate connections with people, with our friends and family, or it's with things that we can smell and taste and touch. Okay, that's where the strength is, and you can see that in the chart because the outer planets, the planets that rule society and long-term transits that's where the problems are right now. That's where not the problems necessarily, but the big changes that are so challenging. Okay, and the easiest, most free-flowing, positive energies are all the inner planets. They're all the personal planets. Okay, so that's where the strength is. If you're looking for joy or relaxation, more likely than not, it's going to come from something simple. It's going to come from talking to your neighbor or someone you know. It could be online. Air rules social interactions in general. It also rules technology, so it could rule online interactions. Venus and Gemini wants intellectual stimulation. So, there's a lot to talk about right now, and there's a lot to talk about that's interesting. Because Venus and Mars are trining, there's actually some flirtatious and even sexual energy, and since it's an air element, it's more cerebral. It's even very chatty. So yeah, people want to talk at this time, and that's a good thing. So as we go into the later parts of the weekend, Thursday and Friday, the moon does enter that harmonious aspect with Mars and Venus in air signs, and then Mercury and Chiron in Aries. And then once it separates from that, it sort of goes, it makes a sextile to the sun right before it leaves Aquarius and enters Pisces on Friday the 17th. And as it enters Pisces, I think it's a little bit more comfortable in Pisces. The moon likes to be in the water element, and Pisces is very intuitive and emotional. So just in general, Thursday and Friday, things do get a little bit more calm. That whole third quarter square aspect that's highlighted on Tuesday kind of dissipates later into the week. So things do get a little bit more casual. And then especially going into the weekend, the moon is beginning to close out. It'll be a crescent moon, so it's sort of beginning to conclude the lunar phase. Also, the sun is just at the very end of Aries on Saturday. Now, Saturday, we have Mercury making the exact sextile with Mars and the exact sextile with Venus. So that free-flowing, social, chatty, shared trauma, but also even flirtatious or conversationalist energy is very free-flowing as we go into the weekend. I think we could actually see the bright side of things right now. We're not just totally defeated and confused anymore. There's a lot less Pisces energy now. We're in Aries season. So, but we're not in Aries season for long. because coming on to Sunday, April 19th, the Sun enters Taurus. So right away, it will square Saturn in Aquarius and approach the upcoming conjunction with Uranus. So the Sun, so as we enter Taurus season, the Sun is in the sign of money and values, and it's making this this harsh square aspect with Saturn at the beginning of Aquarius. So there are big developments happening in society that are now at odds with the individual. There's this clash between the common people and between the government or leaders, or these larger hierarchical structures. Yeah, and in general, it becomes a mixed bag going into the weekend, because basically Tuesday's more tense, very intense, and then it mellows out going into the as we get toward the end of the week. And then the weekend becomes more of a mixed bag because the Sun is making that harsh square aspect, and then pretty soon we're going to experience more changes, because next week we will have a new moon in Taurus, really kickstarting the Taurus season. So it'll really feel like the middle of spring, really feel a lot more like spring. But this new moon will be conjunct Uranus, so there'll be some big, sudden changes or awakening, some big developments regarding money and values versus more complicated structures or government. And yeah, I think that's all I've got for you. I should mention too, the nodes are just they're about to switch from Cancer Capricorn to Gemini Sagittarius. But that won't happen until the beginning of next month. So yeah, a lot happening this whole year. There's many chapters ending, many chapters beginning. So we're kind of in the crux of this whole situation. But yeah, that's all I've got for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.